It doesn't always start with a scene. Sometimes it starts with a tone that's slightly sharper than necessary. A joke at your expense that gets a laugh, but leaves you standing there with something cold in your chest. An eye roll that happens just fast enough that you can't call it out without sounding petty. A dismissal you wouldn't understand that ends a conversation before it started. And because none of it is enormous, you let it go. Again and again. Until one day you realize you've been letting things go so long that you've quietly started organizing your behavior around her reactions, choosing your words more carefully, shrinking a little when you walk in the door, laughing along at things that don't feel funny. That's not peace. That's accommodation that's gone on too long. And if you're here watching this, something in you already knows the difference. This video is not about winning arguments or changing her. It's about something quieter and more useful than that. How to respond from a place of actual self-respect rather than frustration, and how to tell the difference between a relationship that's going through friction and one that's steadily eroding you. If that sounds like something worth 20 minutes of your time, stay with me. And if content like this is useful to you, a subscription costs nothing and helps me keep making it. Before we get into the how, we need to be clear about the what, because she doesn't respect me can describe a lot of different situations, and some of them require very different responses. Here are forms that disrespect often takes in relationships, named specifically contempt. Not just criticism. Contempt is criticism wrapped in disdain. It sounds like, "Of course you'd think that," or "I don't know why I bother explaining things to you." It's different from disagreement because it's not engaging with your idea. It's dismissing you as a person capable of having valid ideas, mocking, impressions of you to others, jokes that position you as the punchline, laughing at your plans or your feelings in a way that communicates they're not serious. Consistent interruption or dismissal. Not the occasional, "Sorry, I jumped in," but the pattern of talking over you, changing the subject the moment you speak, or responding to what you said with something that makes clear they weren't listening. Sarcasm used as a weapon. There's playful sarcasm between people who genuinely like each other, and there's sarcasm deployed to avoid direct conflict while still landing a hit. The difference is usually in whether it brings you closer or makes you feel smaller. Stonewalling combined with contempt. Silence as a tool of punishment. Not, "I need space to process," but "I'm going to withhold engagement until you behave correctly." This is different from someone genuinely needing time to calm down, publicly undermining you, correcting you in front of people, in a way designed to establish hierarchy rather than accuracy, sharing private things, making you the subject of complaints to mutual friends, ignoring clearly stated needs or limits. You've said, calmly and plainly, that something bothers you. It continues, not because the conversation was unclear, but because the limit wasn't taken seriously. Now, a crucial distinction. Normal conflict is not disrespect. Disagreement, frustration, a difficult conversation where someone says something poorly. These are not the same thing as contempt. Every relationship has friction. Friction is not a sign that respect has left the room. What separates conflict from disrespect and disrespect from emotional abuse is mostly about pattern, intent, and impact over time. A hard conversation is not an attack. Consistent contempt is. And if what you're dealing with includes threats, isolation, control, intimidation, or behavior that makes you feel unsafe, that is a different category entirely, and we'll address it directly before this is over. Way 1. Stop absorbing and start noticing. The first thing that needs to change isn't what you say. It's what you allow to pass without internal acknowledgement. Most men in this situation have become so practiced at absorbing small moments of disrespect that they don't fully register them anymore. They get filed under "not worth making a thing of" before they're even consciously processed. The result is a kind of slow accumulation that shows up as resentment, withdrawal, or a general dullness toward the relationship. Before you can respond well, you need to actually notice clearly. This week, try this. When something happens that makes you feel dismissed or mocked or diminished, don't immediately decide whether to act on it. Just name it to yourself, honestly. That landed as contempt. That felt dismissive. That joke was at my expense and it wasn't playful. You're not cataloging grievances. You're paying attention to your own experience with the same care you probably extend to everyone else. What not to do. Don't build a mental case file to present later. Don't rehearse arguments. Just notice. Way 2. Respond in the moment, briefly. The impulse when something stings is to either swallow it or escalate. Neither works well over time. There's a third option, a short, calm, present tense response that names what just happened without drama. What this sounds like. That came across as dismissive to me. I don't want to make a big thing of it, but I wanted you to know. Or, for something lighter, that joke landed differently than I think you intended. I'm not upset, just noting it. These lines do a few things simultaneously. They don't pretend nothing happened. They don't accuse or catastrophize. They keep you on the side of clarity rather than complaint. And they give her an opportunity to respond well, which tells you something, one way or another. What not to do. Don't say it with coldness designed to punish. Don't follow it with a list of prior incidents. Say the thing, mean it, and then genuinely let it sit. The boundary. You are allowed to name your experience. This is not dramatic. This is normal adult communication. Way 3. Get clear on what you need. Then say it. Once clearly. This one is harder than it sounds because it requires knowing what you actually want, rather than just knowing what you're tired of. There's a difference between stop doing that and what I need from this relationship is to feel like my perspective is taken seriously. The first is reactive. The second is informative. The second also puts something on the table that the other person has to actually respond to. Pick a moment that's calm, not mid-argument, not when she's stressed, not when you're flooded, and say the thing directly. What this sounds like? I want to talk about something that's been sitting with me, not to argue about specifics, but because I think something's been off between us, and I'd rather address it than let it grow. Then say the actual thing, plainly. Without a preamble so long, she's already defensive before you've arrived at the point. What not to do. Don't say it once and then repeat it 12 more times across the next 3 weeks in slightly different forms. If you've said it clearly and it hasn't been engaged with, that's information. Repeating yourself doesn't make the message land harder. It just makes you easier to dismiss. The boundary. A need clearly expressed one time by an adult in a relationship is a reasonable thing. If it's consistently treated as an imposition, that matters. Way 4. Stop negotiating your own reactions. This is subtle but important. In many relationships where disrespect has become a pattern, the person on the receiving end has learned, usually unconsciously, to manage the other person's response to their feelings. So, instead of simply being hurt, they explain why their hurt is justified. Instead of simply being frustrated, they pre-defend the frustration. I know this might sound stupid, but that comment actually bothered me. I'm not trying to start something, but I need to say, these qualifiers are attempts to make your emotional experience more palatable before it's been rejected, which means you've already anticipated rejection and started accommodating it. Try dropping the pre-apology. Your experience doesn't need a lawyer. What this sounds like instead? That bothered me. Full stop. No qualifications. See what happens next. How someone responds to a plain statement of your experience tells you a great deal. What not to do. Don't deliver it as a provocation. Aggressive flatness isn't the goal. Just mean what you say without the defensive scaffolding around it. Way 5. Let consequences be natural, not theatrical. Here is where a lot of advice in this space goes sideways. It starts talking about making her feel the loss, or pulling back strategically, as if your withdrawal is a move in a game designed to produce a specific reaction. That's not self-respect. That's manipulation with better PR. Natural consequences look different. They look like, if this conversation doesn't go anywhere, I'm going to take some space because I need to think about what I want. Not because it will produce a result in her, but because it's genuinely what you need. The distinction matters. One is honest. The other is performed for an audience. What this sounds like? I've said what I needed to say. I'm going to take a little space over the next couple of days. Not as a punishment, I just need some room to think. What not to do? Don't announce consequences and then not follow through. Don't manufacture distance to create anxiety and then pretend it was genuine. Both of you will know the difference, even if neither of you says it. The boundary. You are allowed to spend less time in situations that consistently feel bad. This is not cruelty, it's self-determination. Way 6. Watch the pattern. More than the incident single. Incidents are often misleading. Patterns are where the real information lives. Most people, when hurt, focus intensely on the specific incident. What was said, the exact wording, whether their response was appropriate. But if you zoom out and look at the last 6 months, at the general texture of how you feel in this relationship, at whether you tend to leave interactions feeling more or less like yourself, a clearer picture usually emerges. Some questions worth sitting with honestly. Do you feel in general like your presence in this relationship is valued? When something goes wrong, does she tend to be able to take some responsibility? Or does it land entirely on you? Are there topics you've quietly stopped raising because of how they get received? Do you find yourself explaining yourself more than you used to? You don't need to build a case from the answers. You just need to see clearly. What not to do, don't use. Pattern recognition as a way of hardening against someone without giving them the chance to know what you've noticed. Patterns should inform conversations, not replace them. Way 7. Decide what you're actually willing to accept. Going forward at some point, and this is the step that requires the most honesty, you have to get clear on what you're prepared to live with, not what you wish she'd change, not what you hope will improve, what you can, as an adult with limited time and one life, actually accept as the ongoing terms of this relationship. This isn't an ultimatum. It's an internal reckoning. What this sounds like internally. If this is how conflict tends to go 6 months from now, can I be okay here? Or am I building a future on an assumption about change that I have no real evidence for? If the answer is genuinely yes, if there's enough warmth, enough willingness, enough of something worth preserving that you can live with the friction, that's a legitimate choice. Stay with clear eyes. If the answer is no, if the honest answer is that you are waiting for a version of this relationship that hasn't arrived and shows no signs of arriving, that's also legitimate, and it deserves to be named to yourself first and then to her. What not to do? Don't make this decision in the middle of an argument. Don't make it as a threat. Make it quietly, on your own, when you can think clearly. This question deserves a direct answer rather than vague advice about self-worth. It's often fixable when the disrespect is recent or escalated during a specific period of stress, job loss, grief, health issues, external pressure. When you've named the problem clearly, she can hear it, even if her first reaction is defensive. There's a history of being able to work through difficult things together. She acknowledges at some point that something has been off, even if she doesn't frame it exactly as you would. The moments of genuine connection and warmth are real, not just memory. It may not be fixable when the pattern has been named repeatedly in good faith and nothing changes. She responds to your expression of hurt with contempt, meaning she uses it against you, mocks it, or leverages it. The disrespect extends across multiple areas of your life. How she speaks about you to others, how she treats your family, how she responds to your career or ambitions. You've begun to notice yourself becoming a quieter, smaller, more careful version of yourself. And it's been going on long enough that it's starting to feel normal. And then there's a line beyond this that needs its own paragraph. If you feel afraid of her anger, her retaliation, her behavior when she doesn't get what she wants, you are not dealing with disrespect. You are dealing with something more serious. Emotional abuse and psychological control don't always look dramatic. Sometimes they look like chaos that's somehow always your fault. Sometimes they look like love that arrives and disappears unpredictably, keeping you perpetually off balance. Sometimes they look like a relationship that's hard to explain to anyone on the outside because the incident seems small, but the accumulated effect is not. If any of that resonates, please talk to someone. A therapist, a doctor, a trusted person in your life. Resources for men experiencing psychological or domestic abuse are more available than they used to be. And reaching out isn't weakness. It's the clearest-headed thing you can do. I want to close with something that isn't about her. The goal of everything in this video is not to produce a specific outcome in someone else. It's to help you become clearer about what you need, more honest in how you express it, and more grounded in how you respond when it isn't met. That's not a tactic. It's just how people who respect themselves tend to move through relationships. A relationship built on mutual respect is not one where nobody ever irritates each other or says the wrong thing. It's one where, at baseline, both people take each other seriously, where difficulty is navigated rather than weaponized, where you can say, "that hurt," without having to defend it, where she can do the same. Some relationships can grow into that. Some already have it and are going through a hard season. And some, honestly, never will, because the fundamental orientation isn't there and hasn't been for a long time. Your job is not to fix the unfixable or earn something that should be offered freely. Your job is to see clearly, act with integrity, and make choices you can live with. The man who does that isn't performing calm or pretending things don't hurt. He's just decided that his own clarity matters, and that a relationship worth being in is one where that clarity is met, not managed. That's the work. It's not dramatic. It's just deciding, one small choice at a time, to be honest about where you are and what you need. And if this kind of conversation is useful to you, subscribe, leave a comment about what landed for you today, and I'll keep making it.